Hello. Welcome to Honest Brew, unfiltered conversations on business growth. I am Shell and my cohorts,
Monique and Sarah.
and today we are talking about solopreneurship to having a team. Now, team can just mean one individual. Just want to clarify, don't get scared that you don't have a team of 30 and all of a sudden you don't belong here or desire a team of 30. It could literally be just a desire for a team of one. But if you are listening to this, chances are you've hit that wall. You know, the one where you're making good money, your clients love you, hopefully, and you're working 60 hours a week just to keep up. You know, I have someone in this window that probably can understand that. You need help. And I know I have been there, uh, being that I have grown a team for the past probably like 15 or more years actually. But these are kind of the signs of the times of that CEO conversation, that conversation of should I hire today? You're also completely terrified. So grab your coffee or your wine. We don't judge. And let's get into it. Ladies, is there wine in there is the question. If you're listening to the podcast, Monique just held up her cup of tea. We'll call it that today. Tea or toddy. But you know what? I'm going to start on this one because I have grown a team for a very long time. I have to say, probably the story that I will start with is not the first team member I hired, but it was probably the hardest one for me to hire. And I think I've told that story in here before, so forgive me if you've heard it before, but it's when I hired my right hand, Liz. Now, I had hired team members before that, but they were dedicated contractors that were brought on as needed, right? So she was my first real like dedicated hours all the time kind of situation. But I didn't even know what to do with her, to be honest. It was somebody that I really needed. My husband, I cannot tell you how many times he told me I needed this person because I needed someone to balance my weaknesses to my strengths. So, and that's one thing that we'll talk a bit about later in the episode. But that was the awareness I had was really needing this person who balanced me to help me run things smoother. Now, what's funny about that story is I got so much in the weeds of what do I do with her. I literally just said, I'm going to hire you. And I don't even know how many hours I'm giving you. I'm just going to tell you to manage my calendar right now. And she is so lovely. And she's also an army wife. One of the reasons I hired her because I knew that she could put up working with me. She could put up being an army wife. Anyway, I just say that somewhat in jest to kind of bring in this reality of I clearly remember that moment, even though I'm so many years from that moment. I remember the intimidation by that and even just the defunkery in it. Like, what do I do? Who do I hire? And my first advice out of that story is hiring people who are strong in your weaknesses.
100%. I know that there are things that I'm not good at. And I actually have made many lists that it's like things that I want to do that I like to do that I'm good at on one side, and then on the other side are things that like I really despise doing and I know I'm not good at, and they take me a long time to do, which is not very efficient. And so just having, and that list may change over time, but for example, hopefully I'm allowed to talk about specifics, but I really dislike doing social media. So guess what? I hired someone that I know and love to do my social media because I was spending so much time like spinning my wheels, trying to come up with like ideas, and like I didn't really have a strategy, and I was just doing one-off designs, and it just was like, what am I doing here? So that's sort of a detailed example of things that I know I'm not being efficient at, like, my time is better spent bringing a new client in or working on a design for a project that's in the middle of, schedule. And, yeah, so that's just sort of a detailed example of what I'm not good at.
I feel like that's a good call out in the sense of I think sometimes when people think of hiring, they immediately think of like, I need a full-time person or like I
Mm.
need an employer or like it goes to like an extreme when you can do a contractor. You can even just do it for like a one-time project. Like that's what my hiring has been like is I'll hire an expert to give me the foundation to jump off of. And then I know I'll get to a place where I would love to have my own assistant just to help me carry the weight of my business. And I almost fell into one of the traps that I help a lot of people out of is hiring out of desperation. It's like you're so exhausted, you're actively like, oh, this person's just going to solve it. I just need to hire it. That is what causes the horror stories that we all hear. And I had to catch myself this year because I was like, maybe if I hire a VA now, like that'd give me more space. But I'm like, but what is she going to do? Like, why do I need her? Like, do I have the money for it? And even beyond like the investment in someone, it's I want to make it worth their while and also give them a foundation so that they can excel, they can grow, they can feel good to where when Monday comes, they're excited to see a Slack from me instead of being like, "Oh my god, it's her again." Like, who wants that energy? So I feel if you're like me, where you're like, support sounds dreamy, may not make sense yet, start off with a one-off project, like your website, social media. I hired someone to help me figure out what YouTube could look like for me. Like just having an expert's touch can be the support you need to keep moving forward.
Yes. And I think the key there is support, and it doesn't look the same way for everybody. So, like my example about Liz, she started working for me for like 5 hours a week. Like, there's people who literally just want an extra thing to do. But now, like, obviously, that's massively increased. She's project manager slash a customer service. And, but it was a way for me to kinda find that place to trust somebody with the things that I trust her with. It was a lot easier for me to hire people who are, like, for particular projects and parts of projects, okay? And I have those dedicated people. So they're brought on only for those purposes. I know what they do well. I only hire them for what they do well. But when it comes to bringing someone into your business where they are actually involved in touching, financial stuff, talking and communicating with your clients, following up on things like tracking things, that all of those pieces, there is a huge trust factor there. So it's really a trust issue that can be a reason why people have this hesitation. Oh my gosh, I have to trust to somebody. And you can even have that difficulty even trusting a contractor to manage your social media or become an outside contractor to do these things. But then there's like the people who get into more of the intimate sides of your business or the touchier sides, and that is an increased fear of trust. So and one thing that points to can so relate with this statement I'm going to give you. Here's the quote, ladies: no one will do it as well as I do it.
Mhm. That's a big one.
The grandest illusion in all of
Yep.
entrepreneurship.
Yep. 100%. That is so true. I mean, I've gone through the fear of hiring. I actually hired a designer at one point, and he was awesome, and I loved. I can't remember how I met him. I think it was maybe through like a collaboration, like with a project, and I was like, oh, I really like him. He's a good designer, and it was just it felt. I was taking note of how I felt when I hired him, and I felt a relief, and I felt like some time was freed up, and those are good signs, right? Those are good signs. So even if you just hire someone per project and with the intent that they would become long term, it's like a great way of easing someone into it, and then you will feel better about like the way that how do they act on meetings? Are they able to articulate their ideas? And are they treating your clients with respect and just all those things and how they're if they're I think we all have a lot of integrity here, but if they are representing your brand and you want to make sure that you can feel good about them and how they're interacting with clients. So that's sort of like I mean, I guess we touched upon that, but I think it's an easier way to ramp up to maybe someone being like a full time.
No, that's very true. I remember I have this client that I've been with for like a million years, and she told me, she was like, I never had to worry about you. She didn't have to worry, where is Sarah? When is she going to get this done? Like, do I have to jump in? And that's where you want to have that dreamy support and know you have that person to lean on. And I know for me, I started out as a virtual assistant. I'm in the admin operations, which means I'm seeing all your secrets, y'all. Like, I'm in it. I'm in the inbox, I'm in the calendar, I'm in your CRM, which is like the heart of your business. And that can be really scary. And that's where for me, when I think about when it comes to hiring, yes, I want them to have certain skills, have certain knowledge of certain tools. But what's more important is that we share similar values. We work well together. Like, we're very complementary. They believe in my mission and they want to be a part of it. Because that's how I see my relationships with clients is I'm like, do we share the same values? Do I believe in your mission? Because like that keeps me coming. That keeps me going. It makes me want to see the whole way out. And I feel like if you only focus on the technical side of things, that's when you can get people who are, yeah, great at Slack, but you guys butt heads because your personalities don't mesh. So I do love the idea of start with a project to feel each other out and then see where it can go. Because you can always try someone new. It's just like dating. How do they treat the staff or the waitress waiter when you're on a date? That's kind of the mentality you want to have when hiring too.
Yes, actually, I have done that from the beginning of my business. Anytime I brought on anybody, I'm like, okay, we're going to do a pest project. And they always do something for visual caffeine. If it's writing, design, technology, or whatever, I come up with a project. So it's my stuff, not my clients. And we go from there. When it comes to somebody who is more in the intimate side of things, that it was like a slow to start type of situation. Like, let me like feed you things, which is like in the circumstance. I just she had to earn different levels of trust. And that was from me kind of like offing things on my plate. One thing I would want to bring to this conversation is that when it comes to trust, I think it's not just finding that right person, but it's also what's internally going on with us. And what I think that we need to do as business owners is learn to accept 80% done by someone else, 100% done by us kind of situation. If they get about 80% of it well and quality, speed, all of those things, that's kind of our point of satisfaction. What is that point of satisfaction for you with this person? So, what I think that is, the place that we have to arrive to, because you're never going to find someone who's going to do it exactly like you, exactly how you expect it. Remember, a lot of that in there is you're also expecting them to read your mind. And that's another thing that I really had to work on was my communication because I had so much in my head. But when it comes to bringing people onto your team, it's no longer just you. And that means a lot of things. So the one thing I want to touch on is processes. You want to do a certain amount of things when you're bringing on these people because, yeah, if you're a one man show, that's great and fine. But then it's just a job you own. But the processes is what allows you to learn how to communicate with your team.
And when you're talking about process, I'm going to ask you to elaborate. Do you mean how you communicate with your team members?
What I mean by processes is how checklists. How is a project supposed to run?
I
How,
see.
if I had a website design project, what are the things that, what is that onboarding for the client? What are the, the checklists of things that we need to start the project? how should that project run? What are the steps to how the project runs? It's and I love Sarah's just grinning through this whole thing, but because it's an operations piece, but it's something that I will say like was a very big journey for me very early on in entrepreneurship, that I had to realize that I'm not going to own a job. I'm going to be an entrepreneur and I'm going to be a CEO. And a CEO doesn't do take out the garbage. So
Mm-mm.
you have to put a process in place of how is the garbage taken out and where does the garbage go? I only use it.
Exactly. No, exactly. That's why I always creating an SOP or standard operating procedure is literally explaining how you want things done, how you do them. So then when it is time to hire, it's kind of like, hey, refer to this document, refer to this video, and I'll still make space in my calendar to answer your questions, to train you, to help you. Because I feel like and Shell will correct me on this, is when you first hire someone, there is more work to do up front because it takes time for them to get integrated into your business. I feel a big mistake is like an expectation. It's like you hire them, you get the invoice or whatever it is, and then they're like, why are they asking me questions? Like, why am I having more work to do? And it's like, you have to pour into them because they don't know you. They don't know your business. They don't know how you want it done because like Shell and Monique, I'm sure have different processes, even if the industry seems the same or overlaps in certain ways. They're different people. They have different expectations, goals, and so on. So that's part of setting the foundation. I also feel like that creates a lot more ease for the business owner because it's like, let's go correct this document together. Like it's kind of like your safety net to where it's no longer all in your brain. It's actually out there and you're making that door open for support to help you in that aspect of your business.
And
Yeah.
I love that so much. It reminds me of being in like hiring someone when you're in a good place. That and what I mean by that is we all our businesses all ebb and flow, right? And for me, this summer is kind of a more dead time, to be honest. But that's a perfect and when you have more space and energy and you can really spend time finding the right person and then onboarding them appropriately so that they understand who you are and your process and how you want them to represent your brand, it takes off, so they'll be ramped up for when you do get busy. And so I think just hiring when you're in a good place makes a lot of sense and it will give you the capacity to ramp them up for, when you get crazy in Q4, etc.
I want to note on a couple things that was said. One is like the training aspect, because what happens when you don't train is you micromanage and you will be
Mm.
more miserable than you were without somebody because basically you're duplicating their efforts. They're supposed to be actually taking stuff off your plate. And if you're micromanaging, you're still doing it in a way. And one thing that I have said with anybody who I brought on was that if I have to micromanage you, we've got a problem. And I didn't necessarily mean it's just a problem with them, it's a problem with me. So if micromanaging is starting to happen, something is amiss, right? And then there's also the thing of like, if your person is not performing, yeah, they could totally suck. Just saying. Yeah, they could. But at the end of the day, you need to look at yourself first as a leader and a manager. And what are you lacking or not doing?
Mhm.
So it's good for you to be prepared to have those type of self-awarenesses and to work on your own leadership, because even if you're bringing on contractors, even if you're bringing on a company who's kind of supporting you, there's still a certain amount of management. There's still a certain amount of
Yes.
responsibility on your side to communicate. But with communication, and I have these conversations a lot in my coaching calls with clients that I business coach, is when you have to give feedback that you are terrified to have. The hard conversations, which is the other side of there's the trust. And then the other parts of the fear is having to deal with being the big bad boss, which I don't promote anybody to be that. But that's a mental perception.
Yeah, I think To piggyback off what you were saying, I think setting your new hire up for success is huge, right? Like you not just say, "Oh, go and do it," and then let them figure it out. You need to onboard them properly. Like, what are you doing now? Maybe they are like, if I hired Sarah, she's gonna completely improve my process and probably save time. And so it's like setting them up for success, but then allowing them to do what they're good at, and having, just sort of that respect. Like there's a reason why you hired them because they're like proficient in XYZ. And so I think it makes sense to give them that space that they need and ask the questions that you're not answering or whatever. But yeah, I think and also to your point about like feedback to them over time. And it's a skill that you learn over time just to start with the positives, and ease into something areas where that could use improvement, but delivering it in a kind way. Like no one wants to be yelled at like a child or, scrutinized in a negative way. If you do it in a way that feels like I'm here to help you and improve, then I just feel like the person is going to have a better response and want to work for you rather than feeling friction from you.
That's
Absolutely.
true. With like, I've gotten feedback, and it's always come from a place of like, I believe in you so much and I want to teach you. That's where it's always come from. And that's how I've learned so much so quickly is I've had clients willing to pour into me because they saw me as such an asset in their company. And then just me as a person, because yes, I'm supporting their business and I'm a person too. I have other things going on and they understand that. And I feel like sometimes people forget that your VA, your social media manager stuff has a life outside of what you do. And the thing is that having that grace, but also having the discernment of when boundaries are being crossed. And I really love how Shell brought up the aspect of leadership because especially with virtual assistants or OBMs, I feel like a lot of people sometimes can have a bad taste in their mouth. And I'm always like, yes, there are shitty people out there. Like that's just a fact. No matter the industry, no matter if it's corporate or business, there are going to be them out there. But if a horror story happens or something goes wrong, you are the common denominator in that scenario. So it's like, where did you drop the ball? Like having that radical responsibility, it can hurt. But that's how you grow. And that's how, like, you're human. You know what I mean? We all make mistakes. We all do stuff like that. It's just about giving that person grace, giving that person time to learn and give them space to learn and ask you questions. And you can see them grow into that role, or you find out, hey, this isn't a fit anymore. And we'll go our separate ways. Because at the end of the day, it's just business. It's nothing personal.
And those are some great points. And I'm feeling the need to roll back to the beginning because none of this will happen if you aren't willing to let go of what's on your plate. And so I do want to go back to that because I think that we kind of hopped away. And so let's hop. So, we talked a bit about, like no one will do it as well as me, but it can, for someone who's a solopreneur who's used to doing everything, it can be a bit of identity crisis. I know one of the things I do early on with my clients who are in that solopreneurship and they're trying to make this transition is part of our process is to get them to claim themselves, get them to a point where they claim themselves as CEO. And I never thought how difficult that would be for someone to do but I think it's because they realize what that means and that, wait a minute, I'm just not going to be in the doing all the time. I actually have, to sit in my vision. I have to, be actually like moving towards something greater than just, what I'm directly doing. That isn't to say like doesn't say that you, like Sarah said earlier, that you have to hire a full-time person. Like this can be like contractors and just as you need them or whatever. I want to repeat that's not this, but it can put you into a bit of a crisis because the identity crisis of I'm not owning my job. I'm an entrepreneur and I'm growing a business. however that business model looks like for you. We're not all out to make an Amazon. That's for frickin' sure. But part of that identity crisis does come a few pieces. One is, and this it's funny because this can be a gift and a curse, is your clients know they go to you for everything. So there's a certain amount of you that loves that because it's like, oh, I have this relationship, but I don't want to like lose a relationship with my clients. But then there's also this part of when you try to do that, then you're transitioning into this, oh gosh, everybody's coming to me still for everything. So I'm pointing to a double-edged sword that will happen through this letting go process. It's the first of you being willing to let go. Part of that, I think, starts with you claiming an identity of what you really want to do with your business. There is no judgment here. If you want to own your job, go right ahead. You want to be a freelancer? Own it. I had listened to a podcast the other day with Seth Godin, and he had built so many businesses and stuff. And now he's like, yeah, I just want to be a freelancer now. Dude, the man's been extremely successful building multiple businesses successfully. He wants the quiet life of a freelancer. And I totally get that. That was actually a moment when I heard that. I was like, and I think I even said this to Monique. I had that moment of, oh, that actually sounds kind of nice and peaceful. But then I realized how much I don't want to go there yet. That's not what I was built for. But I am going on and on. And I really want to swing this back over to you ladies.
I mean, I think you have to, like, to your point, you have to be ready for the next phase. And that means, like, is it the next phase meaning I'm going to build my business up and hire, outside people who then become part of my team? Or am I going to downscale, like you were just saying about Seth Godin? Like, whatever it is that you come to conclude at the end of the day, you kind of want to be true to that and be ready for it.
And it's not just preparing your business for it, but preparing yourself for it too, especially depending on the role you're hiring. It's something that I experienced as a VA is that people think like, I just stopped doing now. Like I have someone to help me take all these things off my plate. I can do less. You do more because you're now wearing a different hat. You're now managing because just as much as you're my boss, I'm your boss too, because I can't do my job if I don't have the assets I need to do it successfully. And so it's about preparing yourself in that way because I see it all the time and I can even see it in myself too, where it's like, it's scary to let go of control because it's like, do I have my back? Can I trust them? Like, once if it doesn't work out, like, how would I navigate that? Like, it can bring up a lot of what ifs and scenarios, and it's because it's new. And with any time you're growing your business, there is that sense of like, oh, I'm about to jump, like, what's going to happen? And it's like, that's when your breakthrough happens. That's when the blessing happens. So it's like that fear, that concern, it's a part of the process. And so the way to alleviate that is what structures do you need in place? What systems do you need in place? Because then you don't have to think, you can just direct. And that person, I promise you, who is perfect for your business will come in and they may be perfect for a season and that's okay, or they're there for the long haul. Everything's meant to happen as it should.
I love how Sarah goes right that like to the process because it's
I'm
true.
the operations person.
When you have like the way that I view my business and my process, it's like my process is the foundation down here and everything like that's how I start every project. It has to go through the same process. And so the process is like a horizontal thread that runs through every piece of the project. And so it's easy, like if you are looking to hire someone and expand your team, I mean, for me, I'm the visual person. I literally draw it out and have like a chart and decipher the areas that you feel like you need support in, or that it's like easier to parse out to someone else. Like for me, I would say when I start a project, they go through like the intake form and contracts and invoices, like that whole piece of the pie could easily be, parsed out to someone else. And they just keep going through that process over and over again. And then eventually this new person that you hired, after they've done a bunch of that process, they maybe can expand into other areas like Shell, you were saying with Liz.
Yeah, and I will say, like, through the years, like, for me, it's been a layering. It's been, like, peeling off the next layer of things that I'm releasing, and for a while now, I've only been really doing the things in my business I absolutely love. That's been for a while,
That's
and
awesome.
I think that that's a really amazing place to get to, and I feel very blessed by it. Now I'm in that weird state where now I'm having to look at letting go of things I actually love doing
Mm,
because I have a vision of these, like, this place I want my company to be, and now it's like, "Oh gosh, I really need to let go of now these things I absolutely love to even further sit in that seat."
mm,
And so just know this isn't an overnight thing. This is a process, and you need to let yourself have the process, because one thing that will come with this process is not just joy about certain things, but grief. And just like
Mhm.
grieving anything, you need to let that process happen. Then there's the process of, like, okay, what makes sense next? And it's amazing how much you could have the grandest plan of what makes sense for the next person to bring on, and when you get there, you'll be like, "Wait, no," because I swear the person that you need is gonna reveal themselves. I don't mean the physical person, but I mean where that gap is, but that's part of that CEO seat, is looking at where the gaps are in your business, where are the logical places for you to grow. But I would say start with, and this is terrible way for me to say it, but start with the stuff you just hate.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Why the frick are you in business for yourself if you're doing stuff you hate? Yes, you have to do it initially. Yes. But at the same token, that's a great place to look.
Mhm. If it's sucking the life out of you, it can be outsourced.
So that's where Monique started. Was She hated social media, so she hired my company, right?
exactly.
Yeah, which is amazing. And we've had a beautiful friendship since. And working relationship. And we love you too, Sarah. Group hug. But I want to go, because we are coming to the end here. I just want to kind of do a little noting on this one, once again, this idea of the CEO seat. And yes, you're not CEO of Bank of America or something like that. We're not saying that. But what that does is there's also a struggle, and I've seen this with clients, also the struggle with being a boss. And we can all have very negative connotation of what it means to be a boss. I want to impart onto you, and I would love you ladies to also impart some wisdom on that, which is, one, be aware of what comes up for you, because that means that's past experience for you and that is not truth. That is just things that happen to you particularly. It's also opportunity for you to do it differently and to learn from what was not done well by somebody else. And
Yep.
at the end of the day, it's about you growing in leadership. And there's a ton of just free YouTube out there that'll teach you how to be a good leader of your people. But that's really what being a quote unquote boss is. But we can have so much fear about the responsibility of that. And I will say, I really struggled. Oh my gosh, I really struggle with the idea of someone's income is relying on me.
Yeah.
Then so the last piece of advice I would say is just remember they are in charge of their own agency. You are not responsible for them. You are responsible to do what you promised to do as an employer or as a contractor, but that's it.
Hmm.
Don't
Hmm.
make everything else your responsibility.
Yep. And I love the this saying, like, treat others how you want to be treated. And I think that when you are the boss managing other people, I personally dig back into moments that were maybe really negative. Maybe I had really awful experience, and I say to myself, I never want to put my employee in that position. I don't want them to ever feel that way because it's not productive, it's not useful, it's not helpful. And so I think even looking at negative things that have happened, but then also, I've had some amazing bosses, and it's just in my past, and you look to those people too and you say, what was it about them? they were just an amazing mentor. That's the best kind of boss you can have, is just having an amazing mentor. So I think, looking at both the positive and the negative in your past experiencing and sort of infusing that into your own philosophy of being a boss.
Oh, why this is coming up for me and it may not make sense, but it's like we all have three problems: the ones we can control, the ones we can influence, and the ones we have nothing that we can do about. And I feel like when it comes to hiring, or I'd even go a bit broader, like any risk you want to take in your business, or like that leap, think about like what can you control? Because those are often the things that will light you up, maybe get you thinking differently, maybe get you excited, maybe kind of trigger you a bit because you're meant to grow. And then thinking about what can you influence? What can you pour into? What do you want to call in? And then after that, let it go. Let it go. Come back to you, because just as Monique have said, that person, that situation, that opportunity, it's going to find you and it's going to come to you. And I feel like that's kind of like when you onboard a new client, when you're onboarding a new contractor or employee, there can be this sense of need of like, I don't want to lose it. I want it to stay. What happens? Blah, 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 blah. It's all going to work out. It just comes back to, what are your intentions with hiring? Why do you want to hire? What is it solving for you? And then once you're clear on that, you can think of, okay, what skills would they need? What personality have I really liked working with? And even if you haven't, maybe you're thinking like, oh, I haven't worked with someone yet. Still, you can go based off your past experience of what did or didn't work, because that is data you have that you can then branch off of. With that said, always come back to you. Always come back to, what is my intention with this? If something happens, the universe is never going to bring you something you cannot handle.
Ooh, that's a bold statement.
And with that, I just want to say a few things. The transition is emotional and practical. Your value doesn't disappear when you stop doing. Branding, marketing, and your operations need to evolve together. So think about that when you are growing your company. And 80% done by someone else beats 100% done by you at 2 a.m. One last thought here before we go to last tips. You can't delegate what you haven't documented.
Yes.
I thought Sarah would love that one. With that, our last tip.
Yes. So I feel like we've been all across the board with this episode with hiring, because it isn't a simple put the job posting up, do the interview, and boom, you've hired someone. No, there's a lot of personal things that can come up around hiring, because it is a sense of, you have to let go of control. You have to trust. And most importantly, you have to believe that it will work out, even if that person was meant to be with you temporary, or you found out they're not a good fit. That is completely okay. So when it comes to, you might be feeling like, oh, I'm really exhausted by my business, or I'm feeling really tired, or I'm like, I hate doing this. Those are moments where to check in with yourself to figure out, okay, what do I need to do to get into a place to hire someone successfully, so that I feel supported at the end of the day and they're excited to work with me when their day starts.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Monique. And thank you all for listening today. We release our episodes every Sunday afternoon. So please check us out either on YouTube or anywhere that you get your podcasts, and have an amazing, powerful day.